So, with Super Rugby posting this reimagining Step Brothers starring the Barrett brothers, it got us thinking, what Will Ferrell film would be what rugby player? What would you, how would you line those up? So, for example, off the top of my head, perhaps Finn Russell is Anchorman because they both follow a logic that's only clear to themselves. Or the Lego movie is Alan Jones because it's a miracle. Send us your thoughts on whatever Will Ferrell films you think line up best with rugby players. So it's been another quite busy week of rugby, particularly of the super variety, as firstly in New Zealand we saw some just mad rugby. I mean, it started pretty well with Lamape doing this to star of Step Brothers, Will Ferrell himself, and then just having done a step and, you know, some bit of subtlety, decided, don't want to do that anymore, and powering his way in a no-nonsense manner over the try line. That game then went on. The Blues got themselves back into it, got ahead, only for it to come down to a Geordie Barrett kick, which he naturally took back 35 metres because he's more comfortable kicking it from his own front room than he is from right in front of the posts. However, that wasn't nearly the most remarkable comeback of the weekend, as the Chiefs got out to a 31-7 lead, only for the Highlanders to somehow come from behind and take the game in the final play, leading to a draw and eventually the conversion to win it. It was quite a spectacular thing to see, and it's the kind of comeback I, as someone that supported Wales whenever we played against Australia under Warren Gatland, is very used to seeing, and I'm sure Warren is alarmingly used to as well. It was a brilliant game with some brilliant rugby. I'm a particular fan of Lachlan Boshier putting the ball down in such a nonchalant way. Love it. Meanwhile, in Australia, there was another spectacular late finish as the Brumbies managed to win the game right at the death to beat the Waratahs. Again, brilliant finish to a game, the kind of game that, you know, even if you turned up slightly late, no, because if you turned up late to watch these games the weekend, you'd have missed the try. Just watch for 80 minutes, just the kind of game you should really be watching for a full 80 minutes. Meanwhile, a few other big pieces of news for Super Rugby. One front, it looks like the competition may be breaking up next season. There's all kinds of stories going around about what's coming for next year's competition. However, one thing that will be happening with those teams is that a number of the South African sides will be playing the British and Irish Lions, as their tour was confirmed to be going ahead as planned this week. Now, this also, as well as being a hugely exciting thing in its own right, lines it up with the Olympic Sevens, whose schedule was also confirmed this weekend, meaning there will be a delicious week in which we have day after day of properly intense rugby, with the first test in the Lions on the Saturday. Then on the Monday, the Olympic Sevens begins and runs right through until just a few hours before that second test begins. That's the kind of week I think a lot of us live for. I absolutely can't wait. And some big news this week for a few players that may be involved in that tour, as I think virtually everyone who's ever been to Hendon re-signed with Saracens this week. So we've seen Elliot Daly, Owen Farrell, Mara Itoje, so many players, as I say, in Lions contention, and that real stars of that Saracens team that's won multiple European Cups will be signing on to play in the Championship next season. I really feel for the team at the bottom of the table. Whoever's getting promoted from National Division 1 is in for a hell of a time when that side rocks up with just World Player of the Year nominees pouring out their ears. Players that played in World Cup finals last year turning up to play against you in the Championship. That's going to be so much fun to watch for completely different reasons for the Lions tour. In other signings news, Gloucester have signed Logan Minipola, presumably as a stealth means of getting hold of his twins. Yeah, getting into the academy early. And the Ospreys, my team, have signed Stephen Myler. Yeah. However, perhaps the most surprising bit of signing news this week is that not a single player has decided to jump ship to MLS, decided to jump over the United States of the America. And so, got me thinking, with the squad's looking fairly settled by MLR standards, no 90 cap All Blacks coming in this week, got me thinking, who are the teams from the East in Major League Rugby? So who are the 6 Major League Rugby teams from the East? Despite the trend for naming MLR teams after cocktails, Rugby ATL refers instead to Atlanta rather than some cool new sandwich, as they're based in the Georgia, where every house doesn't come equipped with a dungeon to breed scrummage monsters. Instead, they breed wingers literally called Harley Davidson. The New England Free Jacks likewise prioritise pace with a strong thread of 7s internationals running through their team, alongside some solid forwards including a cross-border boiler-house combination of Ben Landry and Josh Larson of the US and Canada respectively, alongside Japan hero Kensuke Hatakeyama, who famously matched the Springboks at the scrum in 2015. However, if you want an international flavour to your pack, look no further than New Orleans Gold, with some nuggety players mined from worldwide. Just for highlights, we're talking Samoa's Kane Thompson, Uruguay's Ignacio Dotti, Canada's Kyle Bailey and Eric Howard, Chile's Nikola Berzik, and US Eagles Dino Waldron, Ben Tarr and Cam Dolan. However, nothing quite matches the power Old Glory DC can provide in the form of the one and only Beast. This is, of course, Big Tendai's team, and he's joined by Eagles back row Jameson Fernandez-Schultz and a dangerous midfield of USA regular danger man Fred Palamo, who was unfortunately injured during last year's World Cup, but has been excellent since coming over to MLR, and Canada's stalwart and utility back Kieran Hearn. However, if you want Eagles, we've got plenty of them at Rugby United New York. Paddy Ryan, Dylan Fawcett, Chris Martina, Nate Breakley, and 50 cap scrum half Mike Petrie, just for starters. But the headlines, of course, within this team will always go to celebrated pop star, womanizer and fullback, but not necessarily in that order, Ben Foden. And the league is rounded out by the one team from the Great White North. The Toronto Arrows squad is more Canadian than Wayne Gretzky gargling a mouthful of maple syrup, with 15 of their 37-man squad being Canada internationals, including great ball carrier Lucas Rumble and ethereal 10 fullback Pat Parfrey, but they're joined by 2 Kiwis, 2 Pumas and 3 members of the Uruguay squad from last year's World Cup, to round out a competition where each squad has a genuinely quite international feel to it. The competition may be over for this year, but it'll be back next year with even madder squads and higher end rugby. So, last week we asked you what are the cheekiest plays you can think of in rugby. Now there's loads of suggestions of quick taps, all sorts of things along those lines, so many out there. So Matman Comics says Finn Russell when he nutmegged his way to a try against Munster last year. That was glorious. I watched that from so many angles so many times that weekend. Guppers says the Lions lifting in front of the post to stop penalty going over, which is brilliant, and one of those rare cases of a player making an action that changed the laws of the game permanently. That's now been since outlawed. Tion Duplessis says Peter Stringer stealing the ball away from James O'Connor as he was lining up that conversion for the Barbarians, which is one of those things I think I'll never stop finding funny. There's something just on how surprised and confused and just, wait, can he do that? James O'Connor has on his face is great, and Peter Stringer being so kind of nonchalant about it and just, yeah, I've got it, I'm walking off with it, and the ball looks so big in his hands. It's a comedy masterpiece. It's frankly better than anything Will Ferrell's ever put out.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Jacob says, you want cheeky rugby? That one barbars lifting move. Now I think he might be referring to the move the women's Barbarians ran last year, which was glorious, where for no apparent reason they tapped a penalty on about the halfway line and chucked it up to a player being lifted at the line out, and then went back and ran the move they were planning. Callum Cadwell expands on an earlier point. It says anything Finn Russell does, so not just the nutmeg, but the passes versus England. I mean, he threw one of the best passes of all time in 2018 against England, Calcutta Cup. Quick tap against Australia, again creates a try for Hugh Jones. Chip and chase against the Scarlets. There's so many things. Like, Finn Russell is just a standing item. This award just goes to Finn Russell by default. That's just who he is. Come on. And Peter Long says trash, which is very cheeky of him. He's really worked his way onto this list. Well done, Peter Long. Well done. Otherwise, we'll see Peter and yourselves, all of you, next week for more of the feed. In the meantime, if you do want to subscribe to the World Rugby YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that. There's a button right below and you'll see it just drop quite innocently into your inbox when it's ready. We'll see you next week for more of the feed.